ice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't go.
Rob, this is your hobby at its peak of its potential, because after this point, it became our civilization. Here we are at the high water mark of Dungeons and Dragons.
That's right. We've reached the pinnacle, folks. Whether or not you think that, well, regardless of what you think is going to happen next, I'm not sure that there's any denying that Dungeons and Dragons getting a flashy, big-budget blockbuster, which appears to be, at the moment, as of recording, overperforming expectations, spawning talks of sequels, starring such big names as Christopher Pine and Hugh Grant. This is a real, they did a real sloppy, lazy version of this in 2000, and we do love the original D&D movie. We love Jeremy Irons chewing the scenery, but this is something else. This is a whole new world. This is beyond Stranger Things. This is beyond Critical Role. This is mainstream penetration. I'm not sure I should have used that word, but I did anyway.
Yeah.
In a way that we haven't seen before. So we're in uncharted territory here, Matt.
Yeah, Rob. So when we sat down with our buckets of popcorn, I started sipping my
our D20 shaped buckets of popcorn. Actually,
Yep.
We did not get any of the D20 buckets. I think they were out by the time we got there, which is disappointing.
I did get a branded cocktail. It was called a Dragon Fire. It was very gross. So I sort of got that on a dare I gave myself. We sat down in the theater, and like there were some people who were obviously Dungeons and Dragons fans. There were like people in like witch hats and stuff, but there were plenty of normies.
There were a lot of so our theater was not full, but it was decently attended, and I don't think that was a problem with the movie. I think that was a problem with the theater that we went to. But
yeah.
Of the audience, yeah, I mean, there were definitely some nerds. There were people with, again, dressed in costume, but there were a lot of like, yeah, ordinary young people, ordinary like families. Like it was a real mixed bag. I was surprised because I was expecting, first day, second day, whenever it was, for it to be either no one or all nerds. But it was interesting. It was a really like mixed group of people. Surprising.
I guess whatever you think of WotC, whatever you think of Hasbro, like, whatever you think of the incredible like Dungeons and Dragons standing that goes on in the TTRPG space, this movie, take it on its own merits. I don't know. What do you think? Was it the basic question is, did it pass the test of just being a good movie on its own?
I thought it was a good movie. I liked it. I laughed. I teared up a little bit. I had a fun time. I liked all of the characters on the screen. It was, I'm talking in very general terms, but riffs aside, I actually enjoyed it. I had a good time watching it. I would watch it again, and I probably will. It was goofy fun. It was definitely like an above average fantasy action movie. I mean, I told Matt this basically.
It was like a comedy
the day
too.
of, but it was funny. And I sorry, this is the important thing. It was important to me that it not take itself too seriously. The last thing that I wanted was, another cheesy, wooden Dungeons and Dragons movie. But I also was really hoping that it wouldn't be a ironic quip fest a la Marvel, and I will tell you that the taint of Whedon was nowhere to be found on this movie. It was earnest in a way that I really liked, and funny in a honest, in an interesting, organic, charming way. I really like. I don't know that it was like good. I think I was very hungry for just a movie that wasn't doing all of those other things, and I really enjoyed this. It was not like a lot of the other blockbusters that I have seen recently.
Yeah, for me, it's so hard to separate the idea of Dungeons and Dragons from just, oh, was this a good movie on its own? But if I try and do that, like I absolutely had a great time seeing the movie. It was, there's very few action comedies, and this was a good one. Like it's a solid like B+ movie. Is it going to win any awards? No. Was it depressing and overly serious like most fantasy properties are. Like, also, no,
Exactly. And this is a comparison that may not seem obvious, but one of the things that this movie reminded me of was Dune. The most recent one. No offense to David Lynch's Dune, which I also love, but it is clear that Villeneuve is a fan of the Dune books, and it came through in the movie. And it's really hard to put your finger on exactly what's different, but you can just tell when somebody is a fan of the thing that they are adapting into a movie. And John Francis Daley, who played a bespectable, sorry, he didn't actually have glasses, just a nerd in our beloved Freaks and Geeks, has grown up to become an entirely adequate writer, producer, director, and his love of
I loved Game Night.
The game really shines through.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that all you really need, like, I guess this movie did have two hurdles to clear. Like, one, to be a good movie, two, to like clearly have some sort of respect or passion or love of the source material, and I think it's got both of those things. Is it the best movie I've seen this decade or this year or this month? No, but it was a lot of fun. And I love that. I guess another big question, Rob, is Kevin's question, right? Does the movie itself convey the feeling of playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like we talked about the first Dungeons and Dragons movie, the 2001. It clearly does not, right?
It does not.
And Wrath of the Dragon God kind of does, but it's so bad that it doesn't matter. What about this one? Does it convey that feeling of, like, if you're a D&D player, you're like, oh yeah, hey, I recognize that?
Yes and no. It really does reflect, in my opinion, the feeling of playing Dungeons and Dragons in a lot of ways. And a lot of people have been making jokes on Twitter, good jokes, about moments in the movie that are, that might be moments at a table. There are a couple things that I want to comment on a little bit later about how it doesn't reflect Dungeons and Dragons, but it has the feel of a fun and raucous and energetic tabletop session, far more so than any of the previous movies. It really does sort of capture the energy, I think, of playing D&D well. Now, there are some exceptions to that, in that it just really will never translate to a movie, which is, sorry, friends, one of my main complaints with Critical Role is that I just don't think that I really just don't like actual plays, because I'm not, because I don't know, I'm expecting to experience a narrative and it's a different thing. That's a whole philosophical conversation aside. The point I'm making is, about as good as you can expect a movie to, this, I think, reflects playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, one of the things I was really surprised about is it did get that general feeling, but I expected a movie produced by Hasbro to trust the viewer less. And what I mean by this is, I thought to myself after the film ended, would a casual viewer know that Dungeons and Dragons is a tabletop role-playing game that you can go buy specialty dice for and rule books and stuff? I'm like, no, I guess they're just banking on the fact that if people really like the movie, they will Google what is Dungeons and Dragons. But there's nothing, and go from there. But there's nothing in the film itself that's like, look, they're rolling D20s in the background there, or I don't know, some sort of meta joke or meta thing that would encourage people to go buy the game. It didn't have that, and I think that was probably a really good thing.
Yeah, a lot of us, myself included, kind of expected maybe like a meta joke or a fourth wall wink or something like that, but it never like zooms out to the characters like rolling dice or anything. It's played completely straight, which I think is the right call. I read a little bit about this, Matt. I think that Hasbro's actual involvement in this movie is less than we believe. As far as I understand it, both in terms of like profits and overall involvement, they handed a substantial portion of it off to Paramount. I don't know that Hasbro was terribly hands-on, which is probably the studio's decision, and it was almost certainly the correct decision. So do with that what you will. But I also kind of expected some heavy-handedness, and it wasn't there. It was played completely straight in a fantasy action comedy, and it was great.
I have some other big points for us to discuss, Rob, but I think this is the if you haven't seen the movie yet territory that you should probably wait to listen to the rest of this episode until you've seen the film, or if you're not planning on seeing the film, then continue on listening. But spoilers from here on out.
I will say that every single plot point is, you can see it a mile away. Like there are no there are no surprises here. Like they're all like, but not in like a bad way, but like you're not going to be spoiled if you listen to our plot summary. But if you really, really want to go in not knowing what happens, then now is the time to put this aside until you have seen it.
Yeah. We talked about some things that are good. Actually, I'm going to start with like another compliment for the movie, because we're so often negative on this show because things make us sad. This movie did make me sad.
Suck.
So
we've seen something that doesn't suck, which is a nice change.
A nice thing was that like all of the characters, all of the heroes in like a general sense were like, I don't know, pretty well fleshed out. Like so there's a lot of supporting characters, right? It's a party of adventurers, and they all I think work, right? They don't all get the same narrative arc, but they're all cool. They all have a motivation that you can grok. No one's like a terrible actor, and like it rules. Like there's a cool druid, like a sorcerer that sucks, and Michelle Rodriguez and being like a badass. And then she even has an interesting character thing. Yeah, it's nice.
Everybody gets some screen time. Everybody has a little bit of character development. Everybody has a little bit of interaction with the other characters. I mean, this is hard to do in both a game and in a movie, but everybody, you get a feel for just about every one of the characters. Nobody's really like sidelined. Nobody gets killed off in the first 30 minutes, and you got to know them, and then it turns out they didn't matter. They did a really good job. I was very impressed at each of the characters, and there are only 4 of like the main party, but they all have a chance to shine a little bit, and you get to know them, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, I guess the minor critique is Doric the Druid, played by Sophia Lillis, is maybe a little shortchanged, like a little less development than I would have liked to say, okay, well that was perfect. But yeah, that's a very minor quibble. I think my major criticism of the film, the one thing that like I thought was the weakest part was, and this is my greater Dungeons and Dragons movie theory, now that we've seen 3 of them together, is that Dungeons and Dragons movies have a protagonist problem. Our protagonist is Edgin. He's a harper and a bard, but we'll get into whether he's a bard or not. And he's played, he's the lead character, Chris Pine. You've seen him, and his motivations and abilities and like the different story beats he goes through, I felt like were the least interesting part of the movie. Not that they were bad, it's just like he's much less interesting than any of the side characters. Like he's kind of goofy and funny, but he has to be the straight man to everyone else, and also he has so little abilities to do anything himself, which narratively works, but it just makes me wish I had more screen time with all the other characters other than Chris Pine. And we saw this in the other D&D movies, right? I was like, man, less of these protagonists and more of the other people.
Chris Pine is interesting because Chris Pine's character, Edgin, is interesting. I agree with Matt that this is probably the weakest part of the movie, and it centers on him and his story. Chris Pine plays the character effortlessly. He's charming. Oh, yeah. He's funny. He nails it. He does a good job of like being the guy to all the other characters bounce off of. But his story is pretty, I don't want to say one note, but he's got a dead wife who gets fridged in the first 10 minutes. And
wife is, He's just constantly, oh, my dead wife, and then
wife.
back to hijinks.
But it's a little
really
interesting because he has a daughter, right? And so it's not just, oh, I want to avenge my dead wife. It's like, I want to, I want to win my daughter's affection, and I want to, bring my family back together. But it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't really work. And there's just like too much like dead wife stuff, though it is a little bit like they hang a little lampshade on it. They kind of make fun of it a little bit.
They do.
But it still, like, it's just the movie's long, not like excessively long, but that would have been better spent, with Chris Pine, either more time with one of the other characters or giving him something a little bit more interesting than I miss my wife. But I agree with Matt pretty strongly. This is a pretty minor quibble because they move through it pretty quickly and it doesn't drag the movie down. But yeah, it's just it compared to how much I enjoyed all of the other stories, it was just okay.
Yeah, I mean, this was a real risk here. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. We'll get to this later, but like there's a couple of, I was impressed by this. Chris Pine has a couple of, like, I'm going to call them, I don't know, real talk moments when, the downbeats, when they failed, your Empire Strikes Back moments when things look bad, where he has to sort of like be serious in a movie that is mostly funny. And he does a really good job. Like the writers and Chris Pine as an actor do a really good job of like being earnest without like being melodramatic. And so his character is really well written, but just something about it is just like not, it's just kind of boring compared to a lot of I'm really just coming back around to agreeing with Matt. So, but it is interesting, boring in an interesting way. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was a huge risk in that if the character was less well written or less well portrayed by the actor, it would have caused the entire movie to kind of suck. Yeah. But it was only saved by like incredibly good acting and incredibly good writing for his character. But like the structural problem is like papered over by these things. And I just think he's a boring protagonist. And
he is a boring protagonist.
You mentioned all the family shit, which like kind of drags on. He doesn't have any real powers, which again allows him to be a straight man, allows him to be the audience stand-in character who asks dumb questions that he should know, like what is magic or whatever in a world filled with magic. But like he's also got a plot where he's like, oh, he was a harper and now he's not. Oh, maybe he's greedy. Okay, maybe he's going to be less greedy. Oh, he's racist. Now he learns not to be racist. Like he has so many little things. And again, this is a minor critique, but like, yeah, I disliked all of them. Okay, so there's my downer. Is the protagonist problem.
Yeah. I agree. This is a structural problem with D&D movies, is that somebody has to be like, they need to be ensemble casts, right? You need to have a, like, there can't be a protagonist, but that's just, it's hard for, I think, for writers and for fantasy audiences to grasp the lack of a main character. But
another high point is that this movie was legitimately funny. I laughed out loud. It helps when you see a movie in theaters, but I laughed out loud many times. It's a real Guardians of the Galaxy stripped of the irony set in the Forgotten Realms. And there were a ton of jokes that landed, some dialogue jokes, some visual gags. Like it was all solid action comedy.
Guardians of the Galaxy is a good comparison, especially the first one, which is a little bit more earnest and has just like, again, dialogue, character, visual gags. It isn't just like quips thrown at the screen. There's something I keep laughing about at the very beginning of the movie. There's an Aarakocra named Jarnathan. And like this
really
wasn't that funny to me
D&D
when I watched it, but like the more I sit with it, I'm like, that is the name I would come up with if like my players were like, well, what's the third judge's name? And I'm like, Jarnathan. Anyway, like little things like that were, not just like D&D jokes, but like just funny situational character dialogue moments. Like it is well written. It is funny. I laughed. Yeah, there are lots of gags, and it doesn't ever feel like too much. It's well paced, like in terms of comedy. Quips to action sequences to jokes and all that. Which is, I think it's important to note, not easy to do. Like we live in a reality awash with action comedies, and so many of them are just garbage. They're not funny and have bad action, or one or the other. But it is so rare to have
Red
both.
Notice.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I watched Bullet Train, which the internet hates, which almost got there, which was pretty funny and pretty good action, but like, that's the thing. Is like it's everyone's trying it, and this is one of my favorite like genres of movie is a good like action comedy, but like when it's done well, it is it's superlative, it's transcendent. Like when the energy is just right, it like, you're transported. And when it's bad, you're like, this is embarrassing. Like I feel embarrassed watching a bad action comedy because I'm like, this is shameful. Like I feel ashamed. So it's unfortunate that it is so common and so poorly done.
All right, last layer of my compliment sandwiches for this movie. Another minor critique, but it's an overall critique, is that this movie starts like 30 minutes too late. I wish the first 30 minutes of the movie were the first 10 minutes. Like I did look at my watch, like when the party gets together, we are 30 minutes into the movie. And then I thought the movie like was really good, like from that point on. But there were some scenes and some parts and some flashbacks and just all kinds of garbled things in that first 30 minutes that was just like, what is happening? What is our plot? What is going on? I felt adrift because I didn't know what to attach these random things to. That's probably maybe a personal preference, but yeah, I thought the movie began 30 minutes too early.
No, I agree. It starts with, and I thought this was very funny, it starts with Chris Pine telling his story to a parole board, which I think is a very like funny framing device. But not only does that not start until about 5 or 10 minutes into the movie, like there's this whole weird sequence with this big tough prisoner going it's to establish that Michelle Rodriguez's character is a badass. By the time they get out of the prison and like meet up with the rest of the cast, it's 30 minutes in. I did like this, but I was definitely like, this took a long time. I think we probably could have skipped that. Like, I understand why it's in the movie, but looking back, I'm like, I think you probably could have just trusted the audience and crammed that down into 5 to 10 minutes, and it would have been fine. Like, we didn't need all that establishing action.
So
I'm going to ruin your sandwich by adding my own critique, which will make more sense at the end. But
that's 2 critiques in a row, Rob. Oh no, they'll melt.
Sorry. Again, I really and generally enjoyed this movie, and people care too much about plots. I do want to say though that that there are like really like 3 parallel plots happening in this movie, and they do come together at the end, but not in any not really in any meaningful way. It totally works. It totally like pulls it off, but it's a little disjointed, and
it is, and also like the heroes don't know one of the plot is really going on. Right. And so it's just kind of like some of the stakes aren't there until the very, very end.
Yeah. It doesn't really like affect the quality of the movie, and I think they made it work, but just sort of like thinking about it, it's like there's a bunch of stuff that's happening totally independent of the protagonists, which is important, but they don't know about and doesn't have anything to do with their story at all. And it's not really clear like why they should care, except that they're good guys, which, by the way, I like. I think more often we should have just somebody's motivation be, I'm a good guy and want to do the right thing. But it just like, yeah, they're all interesting. And this isn't like Wrath of the Dragon God, where there's a weird like library subplot with dead wife,
half the movie,
undead wife. Everything is interesting and compelling, and the villain is a really great character, and the sub villain, let's call him the deuteragonist. I don't know, whatever Hugh Grant's character is. They're all very interesting and fun to watch, but it definitely like feels a little bit like there's just a bunch of threads, and then they kind of get stitched together at the very, like literally like the very, very end, and then, you know, it's all wrapped up. But that's, I think, a minor complaint, but it is, there's no, like, again, you're not, if you love like a story well told where all of these, you know, pieces fall into place, and, you know, the machinations of the villain suddenly become clear, this is not that movie. There's no like aha moment. There's no, you know, grand scheme or puzzle, right?
Kaiser Soze, yeah.
Yeah, this isn't The Usual Suspects. As long as you aren't expecting that, it's totally fine. And I wasn't looking for that, and I didn't need it, but it definitely, at the end, I was like, hang on a second. That doesn't make any sense. But it's pretty minor.
Speaking of that plot that doesn't make any sense, let's go through it, Rob. I'm sure we have more praises and critiques to hit as we talk about each part of the movie. So the film starts with a terrible orc being locked into just a evil looking prison somewhere in Icewind Dale. The orc is put in a cell with two of our protagonists. I believe this prison is in the most recent D&D book. It's Prisoner 13 is the adventure. It's called Revel's End in the game. And yes, he's locked into prison with
they literally
Holga.
Break blocks of ice. That's what they're doing. Is they instead of like hammering in a quarry, they're just chopping ice for some reason. It's
for
beautiful.
Tasty drinks, I assume. Yes, he's locked in. An orc is locked into a prison cell with Holga, that's Michelle Rodriguez, and Edgin, Chris Pine, and then he proceeds to threaten Holga with sexual violence, which I was like, whoa,
he's just being creepy. He doesn't, you know, he just wants to make her his prison wife. Anyway, and then she breaks
I was like,
his knees.
Is this the best way to start a movie? I was just a little.
Yeah, it was weird. She breaks his knees and breaks his neck, and it's established that Holga loves potatoes. She's eating a potato, and he interrupts her eating a potato. Very relatable. I'm a big fan of this character detail.
Starch. Edgin tells their backstory to the parole board, which includes being a harper, being part of a team of thieves, having his wife killed by the Red Wizards of Thay, and them stealing some stuff they shouldn't have stolen.
Important note, the reason, and I actually appreciated this because D&D nerd, not in the lore as far as I know, but she was stabbed by a red wizard's knife, which apparently even magic cannot fix, right? A raise dead or resurrection spell won't work on somebody killed by a red wizard's knife. So if you are already like, excuse me, a harper could afford to raise dead. No, you're wrong.
Nope.
She's dead for good. Or is she?
It's like the final blades in Galarian, or the Keeper's Scythe, I think it's called, in Eberron. They're magic items that prevent resurrection if you kill someone. Yeah, resurrection. But because those settings are cooler than the Forgotten Realms, they actually already have them built in.
The Red Wizards are established, as sort of our antagonists.
Right.
Which is good. It works. They look evil. They have red robes. They have tattoos. They're all bald. You know, we see a couple of them in the beginning, and it's established that they killed Edgin's wife, and now he's... there's more to the plot. More to his backstory.
Right. Edgin has a daughter who has basically a ring of invisibility as an amulet. They all work together to steal stuff with the help of our wizard, our wizard character played by Justice Smith, and Hugh Grant's character.
Matt, this is critical.
Sorcerer. He's not a wizard. He's a sorcerer. And Hugh Grant's character, Forge Fitzwilliams, who's like their face.
A rogue.
Yeah, a rogue of some kind. And they they basically pull a lot of thieves. They live their life with, Edgin mourns his dead wife, but everything's fine. They have a new family now, a family of thieves. They're hired for a job to steal something they probably shouldn't from the Harper's very treasury. And
hired
then
by
they're betrayed.
Sophina, our wizard. Well, spoiler,
Yeah.
she's the antagonist, but yeah, hired to steal something. This is a classic heist plot. You know, you've got a Johnson that you maybe shouldn't trust, and your fixer, which is kind of what Forge is. This is almost like a Shadowrun adventure.
So they're trying to steal a tablet as part of the haul that could bring Edgin's wife back. It's how they bring him in. They're betrayed, and Holga and Edgin get locked up, and that's how they start the plot, and that's why they're at the parole board. So before we get to the next plot beat, I actually think there was I don't know if you remember this, Rob, and maybe I'll insert the clip. But the trailer for the movie has a voiceover from Chris Pine that is not in the actual movie. This is common practice. But he says something along the lines.
We help the wrong person steal the wrong thing. We didn't mean to unleash the greatest evil the world has ever known. But we're gonna fix it.
So how do we pull that off?
We stole the wrong thing from the wrong person, and now we gotta set it right. And that does happen. We see the evil red wizard, Sophina, played by Daisy Head, grab a mystical artifact horn. But like Edgin and Holga and the other heroes don't really even know about this, or like know that it's bad, or know by pulling this heist, trying to get a tablet, to raise his wife, which is, that's a good cause, that they've unleashed some evil. And I just sort of thought, man, if the plot was as it was described in the trailer, it might be a lot more compelling, in that Edgin's and the party's motivation is just, hey, you've got to fix what you fucked up. This is your responsibility now. You're not just thieves anymore. You've created this. Why don't you fix it? To me, that would be way better than my wife got fridged or whatever.
The plot as it exists in the movie makes most of the main characters blameless, or mostly blameless. Just wrong place, the wrong time, stole something they shouldn't have, but for the right reasons. But if they'd actually stolen something just out of greed, and then had to make it right, that I agree with Matt, that would have been more interesting. That would have been much more complicated than I think, the morality of honor amongst thieves is generally interested in exploring.
I think it would be less complicated in that it allows you to introduce our final temporary member of the party, a paladin who we'll get to later, and that he just shows up to arrest the main parties. Like, y'all stole this thing and unleashed it on the world. You've got to go fix it. And then, they decide that he's right. And then they work together. Anyway, so leaving, they try and escape the parole board meeting by tackling an Aarakocra and jumping through a window in really a very, very funny bit. And they escape.
And they get away?
And then we get the first part of the plot. And this plot is very fucking complicated, which is that Forge is now mayor or lord of Neverwinter, and that he is raising Edgin's daughter as his own, and that they've got to go get her back.
It becomes clear pretty quickly that Forge has the assistance of Sophina, a powerful wizard. It does not take a rocket scientist to determine that Sophina is the real power behind the throne. Like, this is apparent within the first 40 minutes of the movie. Forge Fitzwilliam, Hugh Grant's character, is a charming doofus of a rogue, a literal, just, obsessed only with his own self-gratification, but also in a charming and friendly way. He does seem to like, what's her character's name? Chris Pine's
daughter's name's Kira. And
Kira?
Yeah, so when the players go back to get their daughter back, Kira's like, actually, you left me behind on this mission that went wrong. I'm staying with Hugh Grant. And then so the plot becomes, one, win my daughter back, and two, Forge is unwilling to give Edgin the tablet of reawakening, which is the aforementioned MacGuffin for resurrection, and it's hidden in his vault. So they decide to put a team together to pull off one last heist to once again unfridge his wife.
Now, this is the whole plot of the movie, is getting into the vault in Castle Neverwinter. The way that they get there is one of the most convoluted paths I have ever witnessed, much like how your players might actually end up approaching a similar task in terms of lack of focus and confusing side quests. But, the first task is to find some people who can help them get in to the castle. And that means somebody who can sneak inside and somebody who can do magic.
They find Simon, who is the sorcerer they'd worked with before. He's stealing from common folk by performing magic acts. And they find Doric, played by Sophia Lillis, a druid who actually hates Forge for his deforestation policies and agrees to help them like on principle. And so this becomes our 4-person party of a barbarian who can't, or sorry, a bard who can't cast spells, a barbarian, a sorcerer, and a druid.
That's right. And then they're off. Yeah.
This leads to like one of the best like action sequences in the game, in the movie. Sophia Lillis's character Doric has to go figure out where the vault is, and she uses wild shape to do so, leading a bunch of guards on a crazy chase as she shifts from mouse to snake to like bird to horse or whatever. It's really fun.
It's really cool. She's caught by Daisy Head's character Sophina in a really like, frightening scene where she like points and screams at her, and it's established that she's not just some schmuck, that she has real magic and knows what's going on. And yeah, an amazing chase sequence. It's not actually a camera, so it's not all shot in like one shot, but it is one long CGI take. So here comes my first sort of like observation about the way that this is not like Dungeons and Dragons in some, sorry, there's a bug in here, in some very like significant ways. Your druid could never do this. Your druid will never
I know,
be
so disappointing.
Your druid will never be this cool. And that is a limitation of the system, not the setting, not the rules, the system. The system just does not let your players do anything this cool ever, and especially not your druid. And
she changes shape like 7 times. So yeah.
And it's not that it's too powerful or that it would be unbalanced. You could do this in another system. You could do this in Savage Worlds. You could obviously do this in something like Powered by the Apocalypse, right? But I think that like this illustrates one of the limitations of D&D as a system and one of the problems of adapting it to a movie, because this is cool, and this is a cool thing that a D&D druid should theoretically be able to do in real time, right? But you simply just could not. But it's such a great sequence. It's so awesome. She gets big, she gets small, she is getting fireballs thrown at her. It's awesome. It's the kind of thing your player might come up with trying to be creative, and then you'll have to be like, oh, I'm sorry, you've already wild shaped. You can't wild shape from one wild shape to another. That's just not going to work. You get caught by the guards.
Yeah. This made me think, my thought while watching this was the same as yours, that this is someone playing a custom Savage World system or a Powered by the Apocalypse game set in the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah.
The other disappointing thing is, after that like explosion of cool stuff from Doric, she does almost nothing until the very end of the movie, which is very disappointing. So like she can't cast spells in the film, so she doesn't really have any other powers. There are many other instances throughout the film where the movie basically forgets that she can fly or swim. Like they're underwater. Yeah, there's like lots of, they're like falling. Like, should you turn back into a bird or something? Wouldn't that be useful now?
She's one of the more competent characters in the party and gets several hero moments, so it's not too bad. But there are lots of times when she's just running around and you're like, well, why doesn't she just shape change? Like,
yeah.
now would be a good time for her to be something besides a helpless human. Doric probably gets the least, outside of her, again, exceptionally awesome scenes, least screen time and attention from the writers, which is sort of disappointing. In the inevitable sequels, hopefully we'll get, a little bit more about her, but yeah, she becomes just kind of, I don't want to say dead weight, but like forgotten for a bunch of the movie after this really cool sequence.
All right, here's the middle part of the plot, and it's very complicated.
This is minor, but it's funny. Simon courted Doric at one point, and she broke it off because he made her sad, which is he's just a real sad sack loser sorcerer, and it's played for laughs, and it's genuinely very, very funny. He is he's like just absolute failure, and it's he gets better, but just the depressive I can't cast sorcerer is it's just very, very funny.
This movie is not completely like sexless in the way that so many Marvel movies are. Like all the characters have like people that they're kind of have romantic feelings for. There's no like sexiness in the movie, no other than all these people being very attractive. There's a
little sexiness, which
we're
about to talk about.
We're about to talk about it, but yeah, it's nice that, it's established that at least none of the characters that we know about are, they all have heterosexual feelings, that at least the ones that we see. But it's not completely sexless, which I appreciated.
I appreciate it. Everybody appeared to have feelings, romantic or otherwise, be existing physical beings. This is not part of the plot, so we won't cover it, but Michelle Rodriguez, and this is a bit of a spoiler, she left her tribe for a man, and you don't find out like too much about this, and it seems like kind of a shitty thing, and she gets kicked out, and then he divorces her or breaks up with her when she's in prison, and it turns out it's Bradley Cooper, who's a halfling. And he's like this like little guy who like likes to cook and is gardening and, working on a book. It's really funny. It's a really fucking funny bit.
Very
like
funny.
it's one of those, you're not expecting it. And I don't know, it reminds me that like movies can be funny without like trying too hard. Just like doing the situational comedy right is perfect. Anyway, so it's kind of funny. She's this big, tough, again, it's just, subverting expectations. Big, tough barbarian lady. Loves a small guy. Loves a soft, small guy, Anyway, so they get the crew together.
Here's the middle part of the plot. Once they get the gang together, they discover that the vault with the MacGuffin is sealed by the arcane seal of Mordenkainen. The only thing that can open it is the helmet of disjunction. So they have to go get a helmet to open the vault. To do so, they go to a graveyard, they speak with dead, they find that the person who had the helmet was a famous paladin, they have to go find him, they meet him, he takes them to the Underdark, there's some traps and puzzles, a fight with a dragon. This is the sexy part. And
the paladin is
this is the very sexy part.
It was very sexy.
And then they escape, and then they're all feeling sad afterwards. So that's the middle part.
And Matt is correct to blow through it because it's really like a side thing. But there are a couple like really great parts.
This is very complicated. There are a lot of steps. This is all very fun. I enjoyed every scene in this middle part.
There are a lot of good jokes. Zenk, the paladin, bounces off of Edgin pretty aggressively. He's... Sorry, this was one of the best depictions of a paladin, of a lawful good character that I have ever experienced. He's...
Right, Rob, they switched the trope from lawful stupid to lawful cool.
Yes, exactly.
So good.
he's again, he doesn't get jokes. He's playing it all very like completely straight. But he's he's not insufferable about it. He's just, God, he says something that was just really funny. I don't truck in colloquialisms or something like that.
That's right.
Which is just and so he'll
he's
deliver
so
lines.
hot and so cool. Yeah. You everyone's like, I immediately like this guy, except for Edgin, which is the tension there. Yeah.
And he'll deliver lines that are, again, completely serious, that are just hilariously funny. And Regé Page did a really good job with this. And he's lawful cool. He's clearly like better than the rest of the party. He has a couple of like insanely badass fight sequences. He saves their asses multiple times because they're all inconsistently competent.
Right. They're inconsistently competent. He's introduced. He's like saving a child. Like people are like applauding him and they're like, okay, this guy's a real hero, right? We're not there yet.
This is what an actual adventurer hero looks like. Yeah.
There's a great sequence to get to him. They have to use the Speak with Dead spell. They basically play it more or less as the rules are in the game, which if you've ever used that spell with players, often leads to funny instances. Maybe the joke drags out a little too much. They get a lot of mileage in it. They even use the mid-credits cutscene to call back.
Everyone seemed to like it. I also felt like it went on a little long, but it was funny. Bunch of undead guys pop up, and you've got all your great character actors with funny voices talking about how they got killed in this battle a long time ago.
There's a great instance when they head down to the dungeon and they set off a trap destroying a bridge, and they try and like make it across. They're like, how are we going to get across this fucking bridge, right? And Michelle Rodriguez's character says like, oh, I have my axe, like it's literally the only thing on her character. I also have some rope. What if I tie my rope to my axe and throw it across? It's like, that feels like something someone would say at the table.
It absolutely does. They end up... There's also something that it also feels like exactly what happened at the table, is they discover that some useless piece of junk they've been hauling around the entire time is actually a useful magical item. It's basically a portal gun. They call it a hither-thither staff.
So this Rob and I glanced at each other during the film when this came out. It looks cool. It's visually great. It's perfect for a movie. Rob and I were like, I think you said to me, now everyone in my fucking games is going to want a hither-thither staff. And it is absolutely, there's like, it would be the most powerful magic item you could ever have, because it is literally the gun from Portal and Portal 2. And if you've played those games, you've realized you can do almost anything with a portal gun. And so, you could go anywhere. It's a great weapon.
It also creates for some really visually like exciting sequences, some really cool like shots in the movie, but it also like, it's pretty powerful, but they use it. They don't use it too much, and they use it to solve the problems, get across the bridge. There's a really awesome fight scene where Regé Page fights off a bunch of Thayan undead assassins, which is very cool. Mm-hmm. He's got a glowing dagger sword, which you talked about, and the other guy's got a green flame. Oh shit! I just realized it's a green flame blade. I'm such a dummy. Mm-hmm. It literally is like a flaming green sword, which is cool. He kills them all, but then they come back to life because they're undead assassins. And then we get my favorite part of the entire movie, which is an extended chase sequence through the Underdark with Themberchaud, the chonky dragon. I love him
right.
so
He
much.
ate too much. He can't escape. I mean, I think this is part. He's a established dragon.
This is canon. This is in
lore.
This is in the lore. Yeah.
He ate too much and he can't get out.
I think the Duragar feed him too much, and now he's just
he's just stuck down there. So like, there's this dragon. It's just kind of rolling around after them. It's very funny. It can't fly. It's really funny. People were laughing the entire time.
I was laughing so hard because like the monster design And like it's scary because it's a big dragon and like he's gonna eat him, but then he'll just like flop over or roll around. He's got these big chubby cheeks, like he looks like your fat cat.
Yeah.
It's just it was inspired. I loved it. I was like, of course you gotta have a dragon, but how do you make it funny? Bring in Themberchild, the fat dragon. It was so funny, really like excellent. Just the whole thing, top notch.
They escape from Thimberchow using a plan. So this is sort of Edgin's value add, that he comes up with plans to use the prestidigitation spell and the gas from Thimberchow's magic breath to blow a hole in a cavern to get out in a thing that, if we applied real world physics to, would absolutely kill them all.
Sure.
So
Sure.
explosions turn water into steam and would cook them alive. Whatever. They make it out. Again, they forget that they have like a druid that could turn into a worm and go up the small hole, or a dolphin, or whatever. They make it out. But yeah, this middle scene here with Renee Jean Page is it's a really good sequence, right? From the speak with dead to the escape from Thimberchild. It's just a lot of fun. I was like really surprised that it was like they saved until the very end the party coming together and using all their powers to fight.
Interestingly, Renee Jean Page literally walks off into the sunset after helping them get the helmet. And I don't know if this was intended or if he was supposed to have a bigger part and they changed it later. I thought maybe he was like a deity in disguise or something, but no, he's just a random paladin who does cool things, who has a cool backstory. A lot of people have joked, and I don't know that this is wrong, that it kind of feels like a DM PC.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He's super cool and good at things, and he helps the party solve a problem that they can't and steals all of the glory. I don't have a problem with it. It was weird. It was unusual. I was like, he doesn't come back later in like a heroic, final return to form. Like you do see him again briefly, but in sort of like a throwaway scene. Interesting choice. I'm sure that, again, in the inevitable sequels, we'll see more of him, but it was, he's not a main character. He's really only in the middle third.
Right. He's in all the trailers and posters, but yeah, he's got like, 40 minutes of being with the party, and then he's gone from the third act. And his reasons are literally, it's your quest now, I guess.
Just funny. It's all very
I believe
funny.
in you. Yeah. It's very funny. He plays everything straight. He's completely trusting. He trusts people he's good, and he trusts the goodness of other people. And yeah, it was great to see a lawful good character be portrayed in such a cool way. Again, I do think the plot would have worked better if the motivation was, we knew we stole something and the Red Wizards now have a very powerful artifact. We need to get it back. And then instead of them finding Zinc, Zinc finds them as like, we've got to work together. Now that I know that you're not actually responsible, you were just dupes. Let's right this wrong.
This is an example of one of those plot threads that is just kind of like loosey-goosey. The only reason this is happening is because he's the only one who knows what the helmet of disjunction is. This feels like
he had the helmet and he put it in Thimberchild's lair, and they ask him, well, why did you put it there? He's like, so it's hard to get to. It's just like, because it will be a cool scene. Whatever.
Yeah, it works within the context of the movie, but this is also something that I would come up with if I was like trying to stall for time. I'm like, you already found Zenk? Well, he doesn't have the helmet. He put it in Themberchild's lair in the Underdark, so you're gonna have to go there first.
And then your players later on ask, okay, well, if it's down there, like, why is it guarded by like gnomish traps or like whatever? Did Zinc build these? So you're like, yes, he's also a gnomish architect.
Exactly. Don't ask questions.
Whatever. All right, here is, as quickly as possible, the end of the plot. So we've discovered that, Sofina is probably going to murder everyone in Waterdeep.
All right, Sofina's a red wizard, in case you didn't make this clear. There's a moment in the middle where she's revealed to be a red wizard. Also, we learn that Sass Tam tried to sacrifice all of Thay and turn them into his undead army and ascend to whatever.
Lichdom.
Does not take a rocket scientist, again, to figure out. Again, you see the exact same artifact. It is clear exactly what Sofina is going to do. She's just going to do the same thing in Neverwinter. Again, the party doesn't know this. You, the watcher, absolutely will know that this is going to happen.
The third act starts at the low point. Simon can't use the helmet, and the party figures out that Edgin knew that he couldn't use it all along. And so everyone gets sad, threatens to do a quit, and then they come up with a plan, an alternate plan, using the hither-thither staff to smuggle someone into the vault to still get the tablet anyway. This all goes awry. Everyone gets captured in various ways. They're thrown into a big coliseum in which adventurers are being hunted to death by monsters for sport, something that the mostly good citizens of Neverwinter seem okay with now that Forge is in charge. Party escape the games. After they decide, hey, let's not play and actually accomplish the thing. They confront Forge. Clever bit. They win Kira back. They don't actually show her that they're good. She just kind of changes around and she's like, actually, I do love you, Dad. They steal all of Forge's wealth and distribute it. And then they confront Sofina and an epic fight and kill her before she can enact her evil plan.
Before we get to the epic fight, which is very epic, there's a good line that Chris Pine delivers, which, gives some depth to his character. Again, mostly one note, but he says to Kira, finally the truth comes out, about the tablet, and she believes him and blah, blah, but he's like, truthfully, I wasn't trying to get your mother back. I wanted my wife back, which I thought was like a really a fairly like deep and complex thought and feeling for a D&D movie. And gives a little bit of sort of like color and flavor to him and their relationship. Again, that's probably like the most depth that we get out of Edgin the Bard. And yeah, this is a pretty breakneck final sequence. There's a lot of stuff going on, nonstop running and chasing.
There are two cool things that happen, which is one, Simon gets to confront his ancestor, and we get an Elminster cameo, at least.
That's right.
As Elminster exists inside this artifact. And there's like some character growth and some fun things. When they come up with the alternate plan, it's like back in Thieves mode, and it's a very cool heist, proving that you could do almost anything in a game if you had a portal gun, which is why you should be cautious about giving them to your players. And there's a great scene where they use the like silent or major image spell which then concentration breaks and it goes awry. I would have loved if Edgin had discovered that his bardic powers allowed him to finally cast some illusions or something.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of great stuff in the final act.
As you might have figured out, even from just listening to us talk about it, Sofina wanted the High Winter Games, whatever they were called, to happen so that all of the citizens of Neverwinter would be in one place, so she could do the ritual and finish Sastam's ascension or become ascended herself, whatever. It doesn't work. The party tricks or lures all of the people out by dumping all the contents of Forge's vault onto the streets, and so Sofina is thwarted. She attacks them because
that confused me a little bit, because the like red mist things seemed to already be happening. I was like, wouldn't people run from an evil red mist anyway? Whatever.
Also, why didn't, like, in the original, when Sastam did it in the flashback, he had like his mages stopping anyone from leaving. Why didn't Sofina have the guards mages? Or something or whatever? It doesn't matter. Who cares? It's a little weird, but whatever. I was willing to just sort of like roll with it. And then there's a really cool like fight sequence with Sofina. She kicks their ass, and then they learn to work together. But before they learned to work together, there was something that was, honestly, for a D&D nerd, one of the cooler things that I had never thought of that I thought was really neat. There was a Bigby's Hand wizard duel, which I thought was neat. Simon makes a Bigby's Hand out of stone, and Sofina makes one out of like red mist, and they like, thumb wrestle and stuff. I mean, that makes it sound dumb, but it actually like looks really cool. I don't know. Wizard duels are like hard to do. I think they're dog shit in the Harry Potter movies. I think they've looked pretty bad. I like they looked pretty bad in like Lord of the Rings. This was a cool wizard duel. Like it was spells being cast. I thought it was fun to watch. I was impressed.
It was great. There was throughout this film, from like the opening sequence where Simon uses the simple fog cloud spell to help them escape, to the final one where we get like an Autoluke's resilient sphere and all kinds of, like
meteor swarm, time stop,
object on a statue.
Yes, and object, yeah.
There's really a lot of D&D spells straight in this movie. Like, obviously, a lot of them do more cooler things than you can do with D&D spells. But yeah, the spells and the magic is great. People use material components. They use magic words. They use somatic and verbal gestures, but it's not so slow and stilted that it slows anything down. And if you don't know or care about it, you're just like, oh, cool magic, right? I doubt the normies even noticed. None
of this matters to the average viewer. You as a D&D fan will be like, oh, hey, you'll be doing the Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the screen thing because, it is there. And they do a great job of adapting them so that they seem like cool and natural magic without being like, I cast magic missile.
One of the boldest things this movie does is to give extended song sequences to Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez, who are two of my favorite celebrities, and they're my friends, actually.
We love them.
But neither of them can sing.
That's
so
right.
That's kind of a bold choice.
Yeah. Chris Pine sings multiple times, and it's charming. He's not a great. He's not a great bard. He's not the worst singer. He's also just not the best. As you may have perhaps guessed, in a sort of like parting blow, Sofina stabs Michelle Rodriguez's character with a red wizard dagger. If you remember, no one can be saved from being stabbed by a red wizard dagger. And then Chris Pine has a decision to make. And I liked this. I mean, it was completely predictable, but I was emotional. I enjoyed it. He, of course, uses the one-use tablet instead of bringing back his dead wife, his best friend, and surrogate mother to his daughter, who never knew her mother, Michelle Rodriguez, Holga, whatever her last name is, Holga the Barbarian.
Kilgore,
that's right, Holga Kilgore, which is good. It's nice. It's touching. And it was predictable entirely, but
absolutely
in the best,
telegraphed.
The
best you knew
kind
it
of
was
way.
coming.
Sometimes you want
there were tears in the theaters, in people. It's funny. I did like the line earlier in the film when Edgin, continues to whine about his dead wife to Zink, and Zink, which is, I think, a really good real world reason for your D&D games, why people don't care about resurrecting everyone. Zink says, did you ever stop to think she's in a better place? Which in the D&D world, if you're using one of the base campaign settings, is probably true. That person might be in literal heaven.
Yeah, he says it in a way that, again, alludes to that. He says, there are many worlds, or something like many worlds other than these. Don't you think that, do you think that it's right to bring her back from wherever she might be? Again, alluding to, there's a literal multiverse, and she may be in Celestia or Endymion or any of the many heavens of the Forgotten Realms, and maybe that's cool. Maybe she likes it there.
Maybe don't think too hard on this line of logic, because it leads to some dark paths as what. But it's a great if you have to throw away explanation. All right, Rob, let's get to some wrap up bits, some things we didn't get to in our our summary that you thought were cool or needed to be brought up. So, other than be cautious about giving your players a hither-thither staff, what else we got?
You just reminded me of one that I really liked. The lore dumps, or don't think too hard about it. There's a moment where Zenk, our paladin, is explaining some of the backstory, and Chris Pine rolls his eyes and says, "Oh, a history lesson." And it lasts like 30 seconds. And here's what I loved about this movie is there's plenty of backstory, plenty of whatever. There are no lore dumps. There's very little exposition. There's not Neverwinter is a city on the Sword Coast in the
right. They never explain that shit. They're never like, magic is attuning yourself to the energies of the weave granted by the deity Mystera. Like, they're just like, there's magic. Like,
Doric is a druid, which grants her nature powers powers and the ability to, no, they don't do any of that. They trust you to be like, yeah, sure, whatever, it's magic, or sure, whatever, Neverwinter, I don't care. Because you don't care, it doesn't matter. This is one of the best things this movie did. I know that John Francis Daley knows all the lore, and he chose not to put it in. Because it's not important. We do not need any lore dumps, exposition. The setting, the story, the characters all make sense on their own. Everything is sort of like alluded to. You get what the Harpers are about with just like a few lines. You get what Neverwinter is. You get what a paladin is and a druid is and a bard. It's fine. It works fine. This is one of my favorite things about the movie is there was no lore dumping. You know, they don't explain the Underdark. Yeah. They don't explain, you don't have to. It's just not important. It just is not critical to the movie. You, as a D&D nerd, will get it. Normies don't need to know. They're the Underdark. Oh, it's under. It is dark. Okay, whatever.
There's scary things down there. It's fine, right? They're intellect devourers. Okay, we'll use them for a joke. This is great. I love that, one time they do explain something, it is both funny and cool, where, I think it's Edgin asks, can't you just magic something? And, Simon's like, magic has rules. There's limits to, what you can do. And then, there's a little joke in there. It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
What else? We get to see a tabaxi. There's only one dwarf. There's only one orc. We see 3 dragonborn. There's also an Aarakocra, 2 halflings. Maybe one is a gnome, though. We see lots of wood elves and one rich high elf who gets, his face melted along with all the other rich assholes at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a nice smattering of some of the D&D species.
It's very human heavy, but
which is good, in my opinion.
Which is good.
Because you don't have to be like, what is being an elf,
Right. This is such a movie nerd compliment, but there's a lot of these are done with practical effects, right? They're not CGI. Like the Dragonborn are wearing Dragonborn prosthetics. The Aarakocra has, I saw behind the scenes of this, is wearing a rigged up wingsuit. This is a small thing, but it looks so much better than CGI. I really liked the attention that they put into all of the various D&D species and races. That was nice. It was a good touch.
Going back to the very beginning of the film, and I don't know if this was just at AMC theaters or everyone, before the film started, we were watching a movie shown in a classroom or at a high school assembly. The main cast was sitting on little movie set folding chairs, looking at us, out of character. And before the movie began, Rob, they're like, by the way, you, for going to theaters and buying fucking expensive tickets instead of watching this on your phone in bed on Netflix, are the real heroes. We play heroes in the film, but you're the real heroes. I'm like, wait, is this going to be an ad for St. Jude's? And I was like, no, it's an ad for buying fucking movie tickets.
An ad for going to the movies when you're already in the movies.
One of the funny things is the 2 minor party members, Simon and Doric, barely say anything or nothing. They're just sitting there. And then Hugh Grant is
he's about to lose
barely
his
keeping
shit.
It together.
Yeah.
He in several takes, he looks like he's about to laugh. In others, he looks like he is just about to fucking suck the barrel of a shotgun. He needs out.
One thing that I liked, Holga and Edgin are close. They're sort of co-parents to Kira. They're not romantic. They have a platonic male-female friendship, and it's nice. It works. There is not noticeable sexual chemistry between Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez, though perhaps there should be. But like Matt said, that there's plenty of romance. Chemistry, again, it's not a sexless movie, it's not a sexy movie, but it is not like action figures being mashed together like a Marvel film. And I don't know, I think it did a really good job of, ordinary human relationships when it didn't really have to. It's just a D&D movie, but they did a good job of sort of putting people together and giving them an opportunity to relate as human beings.
Would have been nice if there was any kind of queer, sexual interest or
I thought
things.
There was a little bit of that with
there's
Doric.
Always some in my head, but
lots of lady druids, and she rides off on a horse with one. I think Doric. Watch me shipping in my mind. Doric is Bye. I decided that Doric is bye. Anyway, but no, it was actually kind of, now that Matt has pointed it out, a little unusual that there wasn't a single on-screen queer. Is that right? Queer relationship, but
not that I noticed.
Otherwise good.
Everyone's very, sexy and good looking. The like sort of fumbling courtship between the two younger leads is I think fairly believable. So, if you're a young man who happens to be a half-elf sorcerer, and you're attracted to an insanely hot British redhead, just believe in yourself.
Just believe in yourself. That's right. You too can be awkwardly charming if all you need to do is believe in yourself.
It does remind me, like, God, man, the Doric character a little short shrifted in like every way. There's a plot about her saving her forest. There's a plot about her being a tiefling among humans and being more accepted among the elves, and she really dislikes human cities and hanging out with humans, and then I guess she gets over that. There's also that subplot about Edgin. He doesn't like Zinc because he's Thayan, and Thayan's killed his wife.
Thayan's killed his wife.
He's like racist against Thayans, but like
also,
he learns
Thayans are evil. I don't know.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, it's dumb, but it's also like whatever. Yeah.
I think it would have worked better as a straight law versus chaos kind of put up, where Zinc is like, we've got to do this by the book, and Edgin's like, it's okay to do things off the book, or maybe make a little money on the side. Okay, any other closing thoughts or other things we didn't get to? I mean, I want to personally say that all of you, the listeners, are the real heroes by listening to this podcast, not by seeing a movie.
I mean, it was really interesting. We saw this with two non-D&D players, and so there was a bunch of stuff that I thought was really like well portrayed. Like, it was cool to see a Displacer Beast on screen, a gelatinous cube. It was awesome to see like Meteor Swarm, a bunch of like D&D stuff. And my wife kept asking, like, is that a thing? And I'm like, it sure is, except when it wasn't. She's like, the thing about the Red Wizard knives, and I'm like, I've never heard of that. I'm sorry, that's made up. But then she was also like, wait, so tieflings can shape change? I'm like, no, sorry, she's a druid. That's why she can shape change. The tiefling thing is unrelated, and so none of this is terribly important, but I wonder how much of this is going to make sense to non-D&D people. But if it matters, if it makes sense, it was really cool to see all of this on screen, but like that it wasn't like a necessity to sort of like enjoy the movie or to understand what was going on. I thought that was really, really well done. It was nice that they bothered to give D&D fans some fan service. It's not like I haven't been waiting my whole life to see, a Displacer Beast on screen, but it was fun. I liked it. It was nice.
Yeah. Hey, Ed Greenwood said he saw the film and he liked it. And if the creator of the Forgotten Realms thought it was pretty good, I think we have to as well, except for one thing that ruined the entire film for me, Rob, which is that Doric, the druid, uses a slingshot mounted on her wrist bracelet, which would require some sort of vulcanized rubber tubing or surgical tubing, which was, of course, not developed until the late 19th century, firmly thrusting us out of the early modern, late Renaissance setting that is the Forgotten Realms. Slingshots could not have been created with the... You can cut me off at any time here.
I was going to let you burn yourself out. I don't have any particular disagreement. It was funny. Again, this is a little aside. It's like, oh, she's a druid. She uses a sling, but a sling is not cool enough. So let's give her a literal like wrist slingshot. I mean, that's cool. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it was a really cool prop. I will give my players that.
To wrap up, I guess, sort of like the big picture. This is the problem. In my opinion, this is the problem, is it was a good, fun, cool movie that portrays a party of adventurers doing cool D&D things that your players can never do in Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm sorry...
The movie in some ways was better than the game system that many of us play. And it's a problem with the game system, not the movie.
It is. And I hate to be like negative on it, but like, I think it should be sort of like a wake-up call to to wizards and to designers, like, D&D still plays like a tactical war game, and everybody is coming to it wanting to play a movie or a TV show, or at the very least a novel. And it's almost impossible to have like cool hero moments or sequences or do anything like dynamic and interesting, even if you are embellishing even if you are with your descriptions embellishing every single action. It literally just will not resemble anything like the movie that you just saw, even though technically it's all accomplishable within the rules. They just don't work the right way. This is not a problem with the movie. The movie was great. It kind of made me want to play D&D. And then I remembered that playing D&D isn't a lot like the movie I just watched. So, yeah.
I would say that one more instance of this, if you just want to be like a smart, cool guy who comes up with plans, there's no class for you. I guess you can be a mastermind rogue, but also, like, Edgin has none of those skills, unless, of course, you head over to patreon.com, where you can get our warlord class, and you can easily roll up a character just like Edgin Darvis as, for example, a paragon or a consul warlord, maybe a tactician even.
So yes, Real Heroes listeners, thanks for tuning in. I hope you found this was interesting. I hope you enjoyed the movie. I know we all have complicated feelings about Wizards and Hasbro, and so you don't have to go see it, but this was good, clean fun. I liked it. Take your kids, take your wife, take your friends. It's fun to see with the crowd. It's fun to see with people who don't love D&D. We will not talk about...
Take your halfling ex-husband.
We will try not to talk about anything D&D movie related for at least a couple weeks. I know we've been really heavy on it recently, but yeah, look for some unrelated content.
Yeah, should we talk about Fate next episode?
Fate.
I want to promise.
Let's do Fate or Avatar. One of the two. We both
okay.
Like, yeah.
There we go. Let's do it.
Something not
Watson.
D&D. But yeah, thanks everybody. Stay healthy, stay safe, and keep rolling them dice.
This was a triumph. I'm making a note here. Huge success. It's hard to overstate my satisfaction. Aperture science. We do what we must because we can. For the good of all of us, except the ones who are dead. But there's no sense crying over every mistake. You just keep on